Alexa, flash briefing.
Richard, here's the latest from your flash briefing. From Neuroscience News, preschool-aged children with better vocabulary and attention skills before they begin school are more likely to perform better in an educational setting than their peers with less well-developed vocabulary and attention skills. Modern pesticides damage the nervous system of honeybees, making it difficult for them to fly in a straight line. The impaired optomotor response lowers the ability of affected bees to forage and pollinate flowers. Young people who consume cheap meals or meals that break a normal diet as a treat are more likely to suffer from eating disorders, a new study reports.
Wow.
In humans, microglia develop in different ways, undergoing growth patterns that go up and down, creating waves throughout our brain development. Study reveals hydrogen peroxide reacts to EGFR in the skin, assisting in wound healing and nerve cell regeneration. From The Economist.
Always knew that.
Hello, you're listening to the free edition of The World in Brief from The Economist. As a reminder, if you subscribe to The Economist, you'll get access to a deeper look at the day ahead, updated 3 times a day. If you're already an Economist subscriber, visit economist.com/espresso or visit our Espresso app to start listening. Here's today's free edition. This is The World in Brief from The Economist. Our top stories. Explosions were reported at a military base in Russian-occupied Crimea, damaging a munition depot. Russia blamed an, quote, act of sabotage. Ukraine neither accepted nor denied responsibility. Separately, Ukraine claimed to have struck and destroyed a forward base of the Wagner Group, a Russian mercenary outfit in Ukrainian territory. There was more shelling around Zaporizhia, Europe's biggest nuclear power plant, now in Russian hands. Raila Odinga, the former opposition leader who lost Kenya's presidential election, said the results were, quote, null and void. Mr. Odinga lost to William Ruto, the country's deputy president, who won with 50.49% of the vote. He is not alone in his challenge of the outcome. 4 out of 7 election commissioners also refused to endorse the result, calling the final stage of the electoral process, quote, opaque. A legal battle now looms. Tencent, China's biggest tech firm, will reportedly sell all or much of its $24 billion stake in Meituan, a food delivery platform, partly in an attempt to mollify the Chinese government. Shares of Meituan dropped by over 10% following the report from Reuters, while Tencent's fell by more than 2%. Since late 2020, Chinese regulators have cracked down on tech giants such as Tencent. Polls closed in Wyoming, where Republican primary voters are deciding the fate of Liz Cheney, a congresswoman all but certain to lose her seat to Harriet Hageman, a lawyer. Ms. Cheney earned her party's opprobrium for voting to impeach President Donald Trump and for investigating his role in the Capitol riot. Meanwhile, in Alaska, Sarah Palin, a former governor and vice presidential candidate, is seeking a comeback in her race for the state's lone House seat. The Biden administration announced further cuts to water usage from the Colorado River for Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico starting next year. Arizona's annual apportionment will shrink the most by about a fifth. This summer, the water level in Lake Mead, America's largest reservoir, sank to a historic low amid a mega drought in the Southwest.
And that Colorado River is
Finland
beautiful.
said it will cut the number of visas issued to Russian nationals by 10% of the current volume beginning September 1st. Many Russian tourists circumvent bans on Russian planes by transiting through Finland towards European holiday spots. Finland said it is also considering creating humanitarian visas for Russians seeking to flee the country. Finland and Estonia have called for an EU-wide visa ban on Russian nationals, a move supported by Ukraine but opposed by Germany. Walmart's quarterly results beat expectations with sales up by more than 8% year-on-year to $153 billion. The retail giant said more middle and high-income shoppers were visiting its stores in search of deals. Earlier, the Beast of Bentonville lowered its profit forecast, warning that discretionary spending would drop amid high inflation. Fact of the day: 55%. the share of violence reported across Afghanistan that can be attributed to the Taliban. And correction. An earlier version of The World in Brief said Raila Odinga is a former president of Kenya. He is, in fact, a former prime minister. Sorry. That's The World in Brief from The Economist. You can hear interviews and analysis from our journalists, including our current affairs podcast, The Intelligence, by searching for The Economist on your podcast app, or by asking your smart speaker to play the latest Economist podcast. To enjoy all of our journalism, including the full version of The World in Brief and each week's full edition in audio, please consider taking out a subscription. To get the best introductory offer wherever you are around the world, just go to economist.com/briefing offer.
In weather. Currently, in Winter Haven it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit with clear skies and sun. Today, you can expect some sun and thunderstorms, with a high of 89 degrees and a low of 77 degrees. From CNN.
Did you miss an episode of Inside Politics on TV?
What a fascinating Senate cycle we are in for this year.
CNN Audio has you covered.
It's truly maybe a coin flip where we end up.
Hosts John King and Abby Phillip bring you the biggest political stories of the day.
We now know Mr. Trump did what he says only mobsters do, pleaded the Fifth.
You see, the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Listen on your favorite podcast app or ask your smart speaker to play the podcast Inside Politics.
From CNN, I'm Jo Beck with the 5 things you need to know for Wednesday, August 17th.
This primary election is over, but now the real work begins.
Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney says she'll keep fighting to keep former President Donald Trump out of the White House, despite losing her seat in yesterday's GOP primary in Wyoming. Cheney is one of the GOP's most vocal Trump critics, and she's faced backlash from her party for voting to impeach him, as well as for her role as vice chair of the January 6 House Select Committee. But she's not backing down.
I have said since January 6th that I will do whatever it takes to ensure Donald Trump is never again anywhere near the Oval Office, and I mean it.
Trump has celebrated Cheney's loss on his own social media platform, saying she can now, quote, finally disappear into the depths of political oblivion. Cheney hasn't said anything about her future, but she has hinted her political career will continue, with some people speculating that she might be eyeing a 2024 presidential run. Now here's a name you might remember. Sarah Palin, the former governor of Alaska, is now running for Congress, 14 years after running on the Republican presidential ticket alongside John McCain back in 2008. She's not run for office since then, but is now backed by Donald Trump for Alaska's House seat. And if you want to get a sense of whether she's changed or not, take a listen to her at CPAC earlier this month.
It's a shame that the McCain-Palin campaign kind of had some shackles on me, not allowed to go rogue, because that's what our country needs right now, are fighters who are willing to go rogue.
But it may take weeks to sort out whether Palin wins the runoff election against the 2 other candidates, fellow Republican businessman Nick Begich and Democratic former state lawmaker Mary Peltola. That's because Alaska is using its new ranked choice voting system.
We need those rogue fighters.
3 candidates will receive more than 50% of the vote in the first round. That means that the state will start counting second choice votes at the end of the month. California is urging residents to conserve electricity today between the hours of 4 and 9 p.m. That's because of extreme high temperatures in the state. Officials recommend against using appliances during that time and turning off all unnecessary lights. The National Weather Service has issued several heat advisories across the western US, and several daily high temperature records are expected to be either tied or broken today throughout parts of California, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. The president of the Palestinian Authority has walked back comments he made yesterday, describing Israel's acts towards Palestinians as akin to multiple Holocausts. CNN's Mohammed Darwish has more.
On Tuesday, Mahmoud Abbas appeared alongside German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin. Abbas was asked whether he'd apologize to both Israel and Germany ahead of the 50th anniversary of the 1972 Munich Olympic attacks. That's where Palestinian militants from a splinter group of Abbas's party killed 11 Israeli athletes and coaches and a West German police officer. Abbas answered in Arabic, saying Israel committed, quote, 50 massacres, 50 slaughters, 50 holocausts. German and Israeli leaders called those comments disgusting and a lie, and after widespread criticism from other world leaders and officials, today Abbas clarified his remarks. A statement from his office says Abbas, quote, reaffirms that the Holocaust is the most heinous crime that has occurred in modern human history, and that what he meant was that the crimes committed by Israeli forces against the Palestinian people since 1948 have, quote, not stopped to this day.
A group of high school football players have rescued a woman in Georgia. More on that when we come back.
Do you own or rent your home?